Hi guys, a few weeks ago I replaced the foam around the drivers of a pair of speakers that I own. They're JBL J900MV speakers. The older JBL speakers and just a lot of older speakers in general that have foam surrounds, they're known to deteriorate because the foam mixture that they used to use did not have the additives that it has now to withstand UV and stuff like that, such that they will just decay over time and just break apart. So that's what happened to my speakers. So I did some research and then bought a kit and replaced it. This video is not on the mechanics, but lessons learned. So hopefully they will be helpful when you do your speakers or similar speakers. The first lesson learned or tip is on JBL speakers that have cones that look similar to what's in these or these particular cones. They are a composite type of cone. The back side of them looks paperish. The front side is real slick, like they coat it with something. After looking at multiple blogs, it was very clear that you do not want to use any alcohol on the cone material. If you do, it'll probably ruin the cones. I read, unfortunately, where some people did that and did ruin their cones. So you do not want to get any alcohol on the cones, which is very common that you might want to do that to get the residual adhesive off the back of the cone where the foam was mounted to it. But do not do that. I would recommend you do, scrape off the foam on the basket. I use a little plastic scraper so that I wouldn't dig into the paint. And then I put a little bit of alcohol on a rag and with my finger went around the basket, making sure that I did not touch the cone. On the cone, however, I just used kind of I guess you'd call it a rolling maneuver with my fingers. Like if this piece of paper was the edge of the cone, I just went around the foam like this, taking my finger and rubbing around it to get that residual material to fall off. Basically the loose foam material. I didn't care much about any residual adhesive. As long as you get it pretty smooth, then the new glue will adhere the cone to the foam. So all you need to do is just take your finger and do that. If you do want to do something else, I would take the back side of a knife. I wouldn't use the front side to risk accidentally cutting the cone with the knife, because like I say, that material is a composite and it's very brittleish and thin. So if you want to rub back and forth with the back side perpendicular to the cone, that might be an option. But I did 99% of mine just going around the cone. I got my finger in between the cone and the driver and just went around it a couple times, cleaned it out. One of the biggest things I wanted to convey in this video is I bought a kit that had the two pairs of surrounds for each of the drivers in both of the speakers that make up the pair. In buying the kit that I bought, the vendor provided glue that was in a tube. This is the tube. I removed the vendor's name or blocked that out. I won't mention them. I'll let you do your own research when you're looking online. It's really easy to pick that out. If it's in a tube like this, I would not get it. That was my biggest lesson learned. This glue is basically a rubber cement type of glue. It has that smell to it. And it says on the actual tube that it's supposed to work with all types of cones, including composite. In just a minute, I'll do a close-up of the driver where I used this glue to start with, and I about had a big problem. Basically, you want to take the driver out, each driver out, and set it down, and you want to put the adhesive between, you get the end of your glue in between the cone and the foam, and you are squirting it out as you're spinning, turning the driver. And that way you get a nice little bead of glue all the way around there, and then you, with your fingers, just push down on the cone to kind of make sure that the glue gets on both the cone and the foam. When I did that on the first driver, this rubber cement actually at places permeated through the material and left dark spots. Very annoying. Luckily it did not damage the cone itself, but it doesn't leave a very good cosmetic effect. So luckily my wife had some craft glue that's just a white glue, similar to Elmer's glue. A lot of the vendors sell a white glue with their kit. I had originally opted for the rubber cement because I knew that rubber cement, or that type of glue, sets up a little bit quicker than white type of glue, and so I did it for expediency, but that was a mistake. So let me be sure to convey that my number one lesson learned is do not use a kit that comes with glue like this in a tube, which will be more of a rubber cement. That might work for other types of cones, but based on what I learned here, the white glue type of glue works great. It works fine. So there is no reason to even consider buying a kit that has that. I thought I was doing good by using that, but it turned out to be not a good thing. So after you get the inner cone done, you wait about an hour, go back around the between the foam and the basket to do the outer part, and get it situated, and then you have basically done it. And you all you have to do is just press down a little bit in the middle when you're doing the inner part. On the outer part, you will have to go around with your finger and rub or press down multiple times until the glue tacks up. I will say that I did use this rubber cement on the outer lip to be quicker, but if I had it do over, I wouldn't have did that, because when I was using it and you press down the first time, the outer foam would curl a little bit, and it really worried me. I thought it was going to mess up the surround, but it did not. I was able to press it down, but I think I would have got as good or probably better results if I had just used the white glue for the whole process. The other thing that I wanted to convey is that the kits that I saw online, regardless of the vendor, the outer part of the surround is just is solid. The original surrounds where the screws were located on the original speakers were cut out, so that you just had to, when you're, if indeed the replacements had those cutouts, you would just orient the surround that way when you're putting everything, gluing everything together. So then when you go to put it back in, all you got to do is screw it back in. With the new surrounds, there is no hole there. I would not recommend just trying to run the screw straight through there, because the screw could actually grab the surrounds. They're thin, but it was a pretty tough little material, and there's a chance that your threads could grab the actual foam, and you could potentially then tear it around that area, which you don't want to do. When I originally called the seller, the same seller who said their glue was compatible that I had issues with, they recommended either taking a soldering iron and just poking a little hole. I don't like that idea either, because depending on the heat of your soldering iron, you may end up inadvertently poking a bigger hole than you wanted, and it'll physically work, but maybe not give you a good cosmetic result. Alternatively, they said you could use an X-Acto knife to try to cut you a little slit, or potentially a little X, and then run your screw through. That might work also, but I was a little bit worried about that. So what I ended up doing is I purchased a tool that you would use for poking holes in the leather belt, and I used that to go around and make my holes. I did it with the magnet side up, so I could center the little piece that makes the hole. I could center that in the hole when I was doing it. So in doing that, this piece here, if I just used the tool as is, would have hit the basket, and I didn't like that either. So basically, I took a couple pieces of popsicle stick, broken popsicle stick. The width of a popsicle stick will fit in between the edge of the basket and the surround, so you don't have to worry about the rolled part damaging that. And I use that to go around and make my holes, and I use the 1/8 of an inch wide setting or diameter setting, and that turned out to make perfect holes for the screws that came with it. And the last lesson learned and or tip that I would convey is that when you get, once you get the screw started, when you get all the way down and you're going to tighten up the screw, you don't want to do it too hard. You just need to snug it because there is a little recessed area where the driver goes in, so it's not like it's going to fall out. The screws are just kind of keeping it from falling forward. It's not really holding the whole weight of the driver since it's recessed. What I did, this is an old mechanics type of trick, is that I didn't want to use, I probably could have used a little bit of silicone or something like that. I didn't want to take the chance of it being against that foam and causing a problem with that. So basically, I literally just use spit. Just put a little spit on my tongue and rubbed it around the bottom side of the head of the screw. And that's just enough. I guess you could use water if you prefer. And because you only need to, once the bottom side of the head of the screw is touching the foam, you only need to turn it about 1/4 of a turn or so. But if that was dry, there's a potential that indeed that screw head could grab that foam and again possibly tear it. So putting a little bit of wetness of some sort there, that will keep that from happening. So that's my last lesson learned. Now I'm going to pause the video for a second where I can then get up close to the speaker, and I'm going to show you a close-up of the driver and what that rubber cement did so that you will see what you do not want to do. And then I'll give you a shot of the sister speaker where I used the white glue, and you can see how that went much better. So I'm going to pause it now. So here I'm showing you a close-up now, and you can see that right here and around here there's some black spots. That's what the rubber cement did. And there's a little place right there. So that's just it. Luckily it didn't damage the cone, but it's not as cosmetically appealing. Now I'm going to pause again and move over to the other speaker and show you the same cone but on the sister speaker. So here is the same cone on the sister speaker, the same size cone, and you can see how that one looks more perfect. There's a little right around, you can see around the edge where it's not as shiny. That's from me rolling it, that stickiness that gets on there. It's impossible to get. I actually rubbed it with a little bit of water on a rag, just dampness, to get that as clean as possible. But you can see how that result looks a whole lot better. The last tip I'll give you is that I put the surround behind the driver as it was originally. The kit provider said you could put it on top of the speaker, but I don't think that gives you as good of a result. So I'm going to pause this again and finish up this video. So picking up where I left off is what I did after I got the glue on the inside and the outside and let each one of them set up for at least an hour, is I went back with the white glue and ran a bead around the cone next to the surround. That any imperfection related to the edge of your cone or any tiny little air gap that you might see, if you run a bead around that, and if you're careful, you don't really have to almost do anything other than run the bead. If you get a little bit too much, you can carefully just rub it away with your finger, because after it dries, it is clear and it'll give you a nice look around that edge that looks real professional. The one last thing is like I was mentioning before, is the manufacturer of the kit said that you could put the surround that goes against the cone in front of the cone, even though originally it was behind the cone. I would not do that, because if you think about it, the cone is at an angle, right? When you get the surrounds, they're flat. So if you put glue around that, you're going to have to take your finger and go around that surround several times over the course of, 2 to 5 minutes, where that glue will get tacky and hold it down against the cone. Whereas if it's on the back side and you put your bead of glue and you press down a couple times where the glue is between the two, well, the cone is automatically pressing against the surround. So there's nothing you have to do to finish up that piece of the process. So that would be the other lesson learned that I would pass along, that I would much rather put the foam that goes on the cone side behind it, like it was originally intended to go anyway. So anyway, this turned out to be a little bit longer video than I wanted, but I'm hoping that the things I mentioned will be of value when you refoam your speakers. That's it. Bye.